Hello, welcome once again to the Tour of Pleasure here in the Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I'm the Lord Chamberlain of this Enchanted Kingdom, Zipgun. And we're going to do an episode. We haven't done one of these for a while. I am that sucker. And well, I sort of am and I sort of aren't in this instance. But it's that we're getting to that time in history where there's a whole lot of really good records celebrating their 50th anniversaries. And as a result, the powers that be, the people who make money off of this sort of thing, they're reissuing records with all kinds of bells and whistles and wonderful, wonderful add-ons to make the originals even better. And every so often, one of these floats along, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta buy this. Yeah. And, they're never cheap. They're usually $20 a disc on the average. But, for what you're getting, the packaging and stuff it's exemplary, usually. And it's usually, I would say often and usually, the last word on these things. I'm old. I'm 66 now. So it's unlikely that there will be subsequent versions of any of this stuff that will improve on what we got going here. And today I noticed let's hear it for record stores. The Empress and I, we were going out for a hockey game last night. And we stopped off at the old shopping mall. And lo and behold, in the shopping mall, there was a record store. By gum. And it's Sunrise Records here in Victoria, BC. They're a chain that was they bought the HMV chain, or they took over many of the HMV locations in the various malls across Canada, and they're making their best effort at keeping the thing going. They're a bit more indie than HMV. They're into vinyl a bit more. And they seem to stock every single ECM release, which is cool. But they're where I keep up on box sets. And because I don't hear about a lot of these box sets, they just slide under the radar. And a few years back, I noticed there was a 40th or 50th anniversary set of, it might have been Songs from the Wood by Jethro, Tull, and I was like, ooh. And it looked good. It looked like, the only problem is I'm not really that much into that album. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, this is the way to do it, yeah. Boy, it's too bad there isn't one for Stand Up. Wait a minute. Stand Up, there's probably is one. So I look, and sure enough, one had been released in 2016. And by the time I discovered it, which was probably 2021, it was out of print and it was bloody expensive on the internet. It was $200 odd. And I was really pissed because I don't want Songs from the Wood. I don't want Thick as a Brick. I don't want any of those. But Stand Up is an album I absolutely love. And I do have a warm nostalgia for it, I'll admit, even though nostalgia is kind of evil. And anyways, here we were in Sunrise Records looking through the box sets, and lo, there's a copy of the Stand Up Elevated Edition, as they call it, for $80. And I'm like, okay, what the heck is involved in this? And as they say, the original 1969 album remixed to stereo and 5.1 surround by Steven Wilson. Well, you got me right there. Plus, a Stockholm concert from January 1969, including 2 filmed songs and rare bonus studio tracks, as always. What this really amounts to is 2 audio CDs, and I guess it's a Blu-ray DVD audio. So it's $80. Okay, but and I look at this now. There's a lot to like about this. First of all, the record itself. I can't talk a lot about this record without resorting to superlatives. But suffice to say that when I was 10 years old, and my older friend Tim Motz, hi Tim, if you're out there, he bought this. He was 5 years older than me. And he hipped me to a lot of good music. He bought this record, and it blew my mind. And he bought this record at roughly the same time as he bought the first Black Sabbath record. And it's noteworty that, to me, in my 10-year-old mind, there wasn't a lot to choose between these 2 records. other than this one had a weird flute player in it. Very similar riffage, very similar guitar sounds, different lyrics, different sort of, but sonically very similar. And of course, these guys did things like Fat Man and a lot of sort of folky sounding stuff. But these guys rocked. And this record is important because it was the first record they made after Mick Abrams had quit the band, after their first record, which was essentially an English blues record. And not bad, but they weren't the best English blues band, and I think Ian Anderson knew it. And him and Mick Abrams kind of were going in different directions, and ultimately Mick left, and it became Ian's band pretty much for real and for good. And this was the result. Much more scope than the first record. Martin Barre was a little bit of at first anyway, he wasn't really that sure of himself. He was a little bit reticent maybe, and a little bit nervous. And so I think that allowed Ian to really, really kind of assert his influence on the band, certainly artistically. Glenn Cornick, bass player, he was kind of almost, and I suspect part of why he was fired after the next album. And I suspect part of it was he maybe attracted just a bit too much attention away from Ian Anderson. I don't know. He really loved touring, and he loved the party lifestyle and stuff like that, although I don't think he partied excessively. But at any rate, he is actually very good on this and the next record. Very good, solid bass player, and they were a four-piece. Guitar, bass, drums, and crazy one-legged flute player. And really, there's nothing really that complicated about them. This record, you get a remix, the sort of stereo modern remix, which is great. It's Steven Wilson. He doesn't make it new. He doesn't really... I didn't notice it garishly different. You get the 5.1 mix, which is great fun because it's an 8-track recording originally, so there's lots of stereo. It's very 60s. Martin Barre's on the rear channels. Loads of fun. You get all the B-sides of the singles. You get Driving Song. You get an original version of Bourrée, which is okay, great. You get Living in the Past, which was the big hit single. That was their first big single in North America. And yet it didn't come out on any album, which was kind of weird, until the album Living in the Past came out, I think 1972. But this came out, and Driving Song, which is a great riff, really good riff song, that came out and was a pretty decent size hit in North America, I remember. And so you get that on the DVD Blu-ray. You get the 5.1. You get, I think there's 2 different surround mixes. You get the original flat transfers, which are actually great to have. Mono and stereo mixes of all the singles. There was no mono mix of this album. And what else do you get? And then there's disc 2. Now, I thought this was going to be kind of a throw-in. They often are in these things. But disc 2 is Live at the Stockholm Concerthuset. And I didn't look carefully at the date. But because I'm a bit of a timeline nut, I noticed that the day is 9th of January, 1969. So I was still 9 years old when this concert took place. But what's more important, of course, to this is the fact that this was something like less than 3 weeks after Martin Barre had joined the band. So this set list is not, this is before they did this album. And so there's a couple of there's an introduction. There's a song called My Sunday Feeling, which is, I forget where that's from. Then they do a song called Martin's Tune, which was an instrumental thing that they used to do that they never gave a title to. And it's got a duff title, but it's really good, and it's a lot like 12 minutes long. And it's them playing essentially jazz rock. And they do it quite credibly for 1969. And I'm like, you got to think about it. If this, you've still got a hangover from New Year's Eve, 1969, and this band is playing this stuff in concert. By the way, they were backing up Jimi Hendrix at this concert, which is pretty interesting. There's a song called To Be Sad Is a Mad Way to Be. And Ian himself says it, and I'll back him up on this. This is not a very good song. Total make weight. Of course, there's two versions of it with two different sets of lyrics. So it was one of these things, I think there was a filler. Then they do Back to the Family. Nice little song there, which is on this. So that had already been written. They do a version of Dharma for One, which is, ladies and gentlemen, 15 minutes long. I've been to shorter punk gigs. If you need a really long Clive Bunker drum solo, now you got it. And then they do about a 15-minute version of Nothing Is Easy, which is absolutely classic. How do you describe it? It's classic 60s band. We gotta fill the set. Let's do a big long improv at the end after the third verse kind of thing. And they're pretty damn creditable. Cornyn is a great bass player. Bunker is a really good jazzy drummer, like all the British drummers in the 60s. Is very jazz. And there's a really interesting thing on here. If you listen carefully, they kind of come to the end of it, and then they come back into the song, but there's no electric guitar. And for pretty much the whole verse, it's just bass and drums and Ian. And then he kind of comes in, and he ends up doing a solo, and it's all kind of not really very good. But then I think what happened is, and this is just me from a guy who's played a few gigs, I think he broke a string. And so he drops out for the choruses, then he comes in and tries to solo around, and I'm going to bet it wasn't a high E string. Because I've been there when hey, it's time for the solo, and you're missing your G string, which is really no good at all. And he valiantly flails away through it, and when the song ends, and this is why I think this, when the song ends, Ian says something about introducing the next song, and then you hear somebody off the mic yell at him, and then there's a really obvious edit in the tape, and they start the next song. And I'm going to bet you money that off-mic vocal is Martin going, "Wait a minute, I broke a string." So anyway, but it's Nothing Is Easy. I mean, and then they do a song for Jeffrey to round out the set. It's in really good sound. The Swedes, what's with these guys? 1969. This is an excellent sounding recording. It's mono, but okay. Done for the radio Sverige. And there's two video clips from this concert. The video is kind of a little bit weird. Martin Barr does a solo while the camera focuses on Glenn Cornick, but you know, they don't really know what they're doing. And another, these box sets are great for goofy stuff like. So then you get the original mono mixes of Living in the Past, Driving Song, which are worth hearing once. And then you get, and this is, boy, for me this was special. You get two radio clips. Radio spot number 1, radio spot number 2. And these are really weird. One of them sounds like Rocky Rococo from the Fireside Theater talking about Jethro Tull's new record on Reprise Records. It's not, it's weird. It's the kind of thing you know you'd hear late night FM radio. And the other one is a little bit of a straighter one. And both of them end with On Reprise Records, Where They Belong. And I am going to bet you money these were the brainchilds, both of these, of Mr. Stan Cornyn, who was in charge of Warner's promotion and publicity at that time. And he was really, really thinking outside the box, as they like to say. And these really have a touch of his, I would call it humor, but it's not really that funny. But I think he was searching to connect with the young audience in any way he could. And sometimes he was just really sort of dumb and outrageous about it. It worked, got them lots of, I don't know if these particular things worked, but I know that for Cornyn, he changed the way people promoted records and stuff. So those are a real delight to have on the end of this second disc. And the whole live disc is, I'm knocked out by it. I really was going to just check it for sound more than anything. And then I went, oh, what's this Martin's tune? And it's really good. So there you go, $80. But the other thing is, another thing I loved about this, two more things about this is, for me, this is an A+. And I'll tell you why. All of what I've just said previous, the fact that this is a nice, small, compact size. I can slip it into my racks. I mean, you've seen how full this place is. This fits into my record racks. As you'll notice, there's a gap above CDs. That's where I put stuff like this. It fits in nice and flush. I love it. It's not some awkward shape. The other thing about this, and I quibbled a bit about the price, because it ain't cheap. And I'm going to take 2 points off of 100, because I don't like the way they store the DVD. That's kind of not ideal. And of course, they got these things. Universal's fond of these things. They're okay. They're a headache. They're a pain in the ass. The beautiful, beautiful woodcut cover is done. And of course, you even get the boink. You get the stand up. Yeah, great. I can sell my collectible copy of the album now. And now, here's the thing. This also comes with a 112-page book in it, specific to this album and this period of time. It essentially covers, and in real detail, the departure of Mick Abrams to the beginnings of the recordings for Benefit. And it's everything a fan could ask for. You get Ian Anderson talking about stuff. You get Martin Barr talking about stuff. You get Andy Johns. You get the guy that did the woodcut talk about the cover. You get some NME stuff. And you get what is a very touching tribute to Glenn Cornick in here. Now, of course, as we all know, Glenn left the band under a little bit of a cloud. He was indeed fired. There you go, remembering Glenn Cornick. But apparently, at some point, they buried the hatchet, and he participated in a few promotional things later. And of course, he died 11 years ago now. It's a long time ago. And he didn't really do much after Tull. He did a band called Paris. He did a band called Wild Turkey. Chrysalis kept him on as a client. They did what they could, but I think it was over for him. And then he just retired. I forget what he did. A food sales company. There you go. Old rockers never die. They just start food sales companies. Anyway, I think that's a really nice touch. Especially since he was a very important component of this band. And the fact that he's only on 3 of their records, and the 2 that really count, for me, they're my 1, 2. This is, I think, their best record. I think Benefit's their second best. I think Aqualung's their third best. Thick as a brick, maybe their fourth best. And I think as they went along, they kind of lost the plot. Although they became much more theatric, and their live shows were amazing. And like Busting Out is a pretty good live album. They were never less than good. And every album, Tool to Rock and Roll, had a great song or 2 on it. Songs from the Wood had a great song called Pierbach on it. Everything up to, I don't know when, maybe up until Eddie Jobson joined. There was always something on there, very thoughtful, prog rock. But ultimately it became all just much of a muchness. I go back to this, I play it loud. And by the way, just to reiterate, you probably all knew this too. During this period, Tony Iommi was very briefly a member of Jethro Tull. He played on the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus, and it's very diplomatically handled in here. Tony decided it maybe wasn't for him. Apparently, Tony decided that Ian Anderson was too much of a bully, I think, and decided it wasn't for him. But whatever the case, and Anderson's very forthright about it. Yeah, I was a bit of a bastard, but he was the guy. He was the conceptual head of the whole band, and everybody pulled on the same rope, and they ended up, well, I'll bet you they all ended up pretty well off. Certainly I know Martin Barr isn't poor, although I think him and Ian are fighting about whatever, which happens with these bands. Anyway, I'm that sucker. I paid $80 for it. I just looked on Amazon today. Oh, and the reason it's back is because the distribution changed. Now Chrysalis is done through Parlophone, which is Warner's. So I think before this was on Universal, and then it kind of went, now it's on Warner's. I'm not sure. If anybody knows, tell me in the comments, because it was gone for a while, and I was really pissed because I didn't want to pay $200 for this, and I'm delighted to pay $80. And what's more, now Benefit is around, which is 4 CDs with 2 DVDs, and I can get it on Amazon right now, and I'm going to do it for about 50 Canadian. So I'm going to do that, and I'll review that too, because Benefit is also a great record, and as good a reissue of a classic record as anybody has made. So I give it my highest marks. I give it like 98 of 100. Maybe give me something better to put the DVD in. And I'll be happier. So there you have it. There you have it. What, you know, people like me, we will spend real money on something if it's a quality product. This ticks all the boxes for us record nerds. They know who they're dealing with. And I, for one, I'm sitting here all aglow because I just listened to the whole damn thing in 5.1 and it's glorious. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that. And maybe I can get enough subscribers to pay for one of these box sets. But if not, I'll just buy them out of my own money. That's sort of what I do. Thanks for watching. Look after each other, and we will talk to you soon.